Hello and welcome. Today I'm bringing you my review of the Duke Nukem Collection 1 for the Evercade. This collection includes Duke Nukem's 1 and 2 Remastered and Duke Nukem 3D Total Meltdown, which is the PlayStation port of Duke Nukem 3D. In this video I'm going to go through the games and I will add each of them to my ever-growing list where I rank every Evercade game ever. And at the end I will also rank this cartridge alongside the other Evercade cartridges that I've reviewed so far. Often I end up doing these things in separate videos, but well, it just makes sense as I've played through them again, or to an extent again. I thought I'd just combine it all into one long, by my standards, video. So I'm going to start off with my nostalgia for Duke Nukem. My very first Duke Nukem game was Duke Nukem 3D, which I played on the PC. I think it might have been either a shareware version or a demo of some sort. It wasn't something I owned myself, but my brother had a PC and I played it on that. Didn't really get far, but I enjoyed what I played. A couple of years later I played the PlayStation 1 port that's found on this collection, and I didn't really like it. I couldn't get on with the controls and I didn't finish it. And it was a few years later when I had a PC of my own and I finally picked up Duke Nukem 3D as it was intended, and that's where I played it. And since then I've played nothing until this Evercade release. I was aware of various releases over the years, I just never got around to playing them, or I didn't really have much interest, to be perfectly honest. I think maybe I played Duke Nukem Forever briefly. Was there a demo out or something? I can't remember, but again I wasn't really that interested. I've got to admit, back in the day I assumed Duke Nukem 3D just meant that it was a 3D game and it had nothing to do with it being the third game in the series. I had no idea of the existence of Dukes 1 and 2 for, well, until more recent years anyway. But anyway, enough of that. So the games on the cart, you have Duke Nukem's 1 and 2 Remastered, which are effectively in one game or one bundle. So you boot them up and you select which one you want to play from there. These remasters are, well, are they remasters or are they remakes? Because they're remade from the ground up. They aren't just enhanced editions of it, they have enhanced them, but they are reconstructed. Maybe it should be called Duke 1 and 2 Reconstructed. But yeah, there's a whole debate you can have about what is a remaster or a remake. But I tend to think of it as a remaster is taking the original code and building upon it, making it more shiny and pretty, and a remake is literally starting from the ground up, remaking it. But in this case it is using the assets from the originals, or at least the visual assets, or recreating them, as they were, or as close as, so it does blur the line somewhat. Anyway, enough about that, because there are no answers and everyone will disagree anyway. So what these remasters do is they add widescreen support with added graphics to cover where there weren't graphics or wouldn't be on a widescreen mode, a redesigned HUD, some parallax backgrounds, 60 frames per second gameplay, the ability to switch between classic mode and the fancy new graphics, giving you a rough recreation of the original limited graphics and screen size of the originals. There's also a wealth of options for customising it as well. These remasters really do go in for giving you plenty of choice. Duke Nukem 1 in particular has added music, and I believe some of the tracks from Duke Nukem 2 are replaced with others, as there were some licensing issues with some, I believe. But anyway, let's focus on the specific game. So Duke Nukem 1. The story is basic. It's a simple, pulpy sci-fi thing where a mad scientist, Dr. Proton, is trying to conquer Earth with an army of robots, and Duke Nukem is hired to stop them. That's pretty much it. But that's all it needs to support the actual gameplay, which is pretty much a 2D platform. I'd say run and gun, because you walk or run and you gun things, mostly waves of enemies, but the levels tend to be quite large and maze-like, and it's as much of a collectathon as it is a run and gun. It's got more in common with Turrican than Contra. As well as exploring and shooting things, the levels will have you finding keys or key cards to open various doors and finding the exit. There'll be various items hidden throughout the level which will get scored on, as you'll also be scored on your time getting through the level. The enemy movements are generally quite simple, and naturally there's a few weapon upgrades to pick up, as well as food items. Naturally, as the game progresses, you get tougher enemies, the odd boss, and larger, more densely packed levels. And there's a good number of them too. On the visual front of things, well, it's It's very much a DOS looking game, but this remaster does go some ways to improving things. I mean, the scrolling on the original version was pretty horrible. I mean, that was quite a common thing with that era of DOS games. I remember seeing some in the early 90s, and after playing things like Mario and Sonic and their smooth scrolling, these just seemed archaic and pathetic. And the visual design isn't on par with those either. But despite that, it does have its very own charm, and I expect that's doubly so if you have a lot of nostalgia for these early DOS platformers. In many ways, it feels like a progression from your C64 style platformer shooty things. There's a very distinct flavour to them. While it lacks the polish and charm of games of the era, such as Sonic the Hedgehog, Super Mario World, or anything on consoles at the time, I suppose. But there is a real home micro sort of vibe to it, and yeah, that gels with me. I like it even though it's not technically impressive, is I guess what I'm trying to say. On the audio front, things are also very DOS-like. Now, one of the reasons I wasn't impressed with DOS stuff or PC gaming at the time, really before Doom started becoming a thing, was coming from the Amiga. The colours and the graphics generally looked worse, and the sound was a lot worse because of the whole sound card thing and the expense of them, and pretty much everything I saw and played with had some really grating sounds, and these are sort of present here. Again, you have some sound options for what sort of sounds you want, and they are quite harsh sounding, and as I understand it, the original Duke Nukem didn't have any in-game music, but the remaster does, and it feels right. Again, I didn't play the original, so I don't know for sure if people who played it back in the day would agree with me, but that's my take on it. As you do have some good sort of catchy tunes, it's not so fast and action-packed it makes you rush through the levels. It feels like it's paced right.
Overall opinion.
Now, to be perfectly honest, I wasn't sure I was going to like the original Duke Nukem games. They seemed very Euro-platformy to me, and I'm not a huge fan of that. I'm not a huge fan of big exploratory levels, although there are exceptions to that, such as Turrican. I quite enjoy them on those. And this is now another exception to that rule. It finds the right balance of collecting, exploring, and blasting your way through a level. There's a good number of levels to get through, and they are quite replayable as it gives you the stats and everything as you play through them. It gives you a par time to try and beat, and you know, as far as remasters or remakes or whatever you want to call them go, I think they've done an incredible job here. It's true to the original, but gives you quality of life improvements, and you know, I'm not going to complain at that. Now, I was thinking about ranking this and placing on my list at this point, but I've decided I'm going to rank the remasters 1 and 2 together, as that's how they're packaged on the cartridge, so I'll do that at the end. But if I was to rank it individually, it would probably sit in the lower part of my top 50, or maybe just outside it. But anyway, the overall ranking will come after I've done Duke Nukem 2. Speaking of which, originally released I think in 1993, Duke Nukem 2 is obviously the sequel to Duke Nukem. And it's a sequel that expands on the original quite well with improved graphics, sound and enhanced gameplay, but while still remaining fairly true to the original. The story is set in the far-flung future of 1998, where these aliens, the Roid Gelatins, kidnap Duke Nukem and plan to extract his brain and use it to conquer Earth. And the game begins with Duke escaping and starting his battle through the homeworld and, you know, trying to defeat the aliens. Simple, pulpy, fun. Graphically it is quite enhanced from the first game and is a much better looking game, but it still has that sort of home micro sort of look to it, or sort of DOS look to it I suppose is probably more accurate. The graphics are more detailed, the sprites larger, and everything looks a little bit more chaotic, but not too chaotic. Audio wise, it is fairly on par with the first Duke. It does sound a bit better, and you have the music which was there in the original. But again, it all works, it has that charm to it, and once again you have all the options as you do with the graphics as well. Gameplay wise, Duke Nukem 2 has the same basic formats as the first game. You've got a couple of episodes to get through, each with a whole number of levels. You run left and right, but now you've got some added moves, more different weapons, everything looks a bit better, and I'd say the game is a bit more challenging as well. Once again, there are loads of collectibles and various hidden bits, as well as your power-ups and extra abilities that you get.
Overall opinion.
Personally, I found Duke Nukem 2 harder to really get into than the first Duke. It doesn't give as strong a first impression. Well, it didn't for me anyway, or coming off playing the first game I found it hard to get into. And on first playthrough I did feel that I preferred the first Duke Nukem. But on playing through it again, I've actually found I greatly enjoyed it a lot more than I did, so maybe it's just a perspective thing and coming off playing the first one, and yeah, I don't know, but I think the end result is I think Duke Nukem 2 is an improvement on the original in almost every way, but subtle enough so that it doesn't feel alien to it and it's not like a complete walkover. They both have their charms and benefits. And I think a lot depends on how much you like the action and destructibility of Duke Nukem 2 against the more simplistic nature of the original. But as these come as a package, well, it's not like you have to decide anyway. It's entirely personal preference. In terms of the remasters, both are very good and they have plenty of options and the various stats and scores which are good for replayability and improving how you do, offer plenty in terms of gameplay.
Ranking.
Rank Duke Nukem 1 and 2 remastered on my ever-growing list where I rank every Evercade game ever. I've elected to put it above Blaster Master but below Bubble Bobble, placing it at 35 out of 462 games I've ranked so far. If I were ranking them individually, then this is roughly where Duke Nukem 2 would go, maybe a bit higher, maybe a bit lower, but I think averaging out, yeah, this seems fair. So moving on to the last game on the collection, and that is Duke Nukem 3D Total Meltdown. Originally released for the PlayStation in 1997, it is of course the PlayStation port of Duke Nukem 3D. And it came out before dual analog sticks were really a thing. And given that Duke Nukem 3D on the PC really benefited from mouse and keyboard controls and having a full 3D effect rather than your Doom style semi-3D control, it suffered a bit in the control department on the PlayStation, which was the problem I had with it back in the day. It does have some exclusive content to this version, which is part of why it was selected for this collection over another version, or other versions I suppose. That, and it would be quite easy to get running on the Evercade, and the controls are already set and in place, as opposed to the work they might have to do if they did a native port. Although overall I think that might have been a better option if it had been possible. But for better or worse, and yes, mostly worse, we got the PlayStation version, which does faithfully recreate the levels from the original. It has the dynamic lighting and the sprites, but it also has a lower resolution, some frame rate dips, some texture warping, and of course slightly awkward controls. But you do have a number of control options so you can play around with it and find what works for you best. And it is still playable despite these flaws. And Duke's one-liners are still intact. The aliens still look suitably wacky, the humour is still there. It is exactly what you'd imagine. A good game with a flawed port with some exclusives.
Overall opinion.
I've got to admit I really struggled to get into this version of Duke Nukem back in the day and playing on the Evercade, to the point that I even lowered the difficulty just to get through it. So yes, a native port would have been better, but I believe that wasn't possible for a number of reasons, so this is what we got, and it's a good inclusion because of the exclusive for the PS1 version. It is functionally playable, but it is also the least essential game on the collection, especially as there are numerous superior ways to play the game. But I don't think that really detracts from the cart as a whole, as I personally believe that the Duke Nukem 1 and 2 remasters are far and away the big attraction for this collection.
Ranking.
Placing Duke Nukem 3D Total Meltdown on my ever-growing list where I rank every Evercade game ever, I've elected to put it above Space Invaders but below Hero, placing it at 213 out of 463 games I've ranked so far. And in many ways that is low, but well, I think you'll understand my reasoning based on the things I was just saying. So yeah, let's just go on to ranking the cartridge as a whole and give my thoughts on the collection.
Final verdict.
The Duke Nukem Collection 1 is an essential purchase for the Evercade. No ifs and no buts. The Duke Nukem remasters are the most exclusive to Evercade games on the Evercade, or at least for the moment. It's quite possible they'll end up on other systems at some point in the future, but for now Evercade is pretty much the only way you can play them, at least certainly in this exact form. and those remasters alone make the carts worth it, and I consider Duke Nukem 3D Total Meltdown essentially a bonus extra. All of the games are a good length and have plenty of replay value, well, especially the remasters with their par times and the scores and the way they track all your statistics. Like I said, it's an essential purchase for, I'd say, for pretty much every Evercade owner. To give the Duke Nukem Collection 1 a score out of 10, well, factoring the quality of the games, the amount of gameplay hours in it, then it's going to score well for certainly. The exclusivity of the remasters certainly boosts it as well. It isn't the most varied collection. You've essentially only got 2 types of game, and they're all part of the same series. So I've elected to score it an 8.5 out of 10, and I'm placing it above Tourplan Arcade 1 but below Neo Geo Arcade 1, putting it at the number 5 spot on my ranking list of every Evercade cartridge. Anyway, I think that about wraps it up for this video, so thank you for watching, and I'll leave you with my rankings, starting with the cartridge ranking, then the overall game ranking thing.